Hello everyone, welcome back to the KMTRADERS channel. So this is the full market analysis volume 131. Just looking for next week really. So yeah, we have started late with our analysis, but we still have, Thursday and Friday, so basically today and tomorrow just to kind of look at. But to be fair, we can also use this analysis for pretty much next week as well. So kind of the same. I probably will do an update video as well on the weekend if I can. But yeah, so we'll start off with gold. So what we can see here, what we were looking at was pretty much this zone here at 1680. We want to see this being taken out. So what I was kind of expecting was pretty much kind of like a pullback. So basically there. So maybe to retest 1760, 50 sort of thing, and then pull back down. But as you can see, we're probably pushing lower. So one or two things are going to happen is we'll start to see something like this, or we'll start to see something like that, and then it could still drop low, but we still not necessarily sure if we're going to take off at this point. So what we could do is look at a buying opportunity if we start to see price dip into the 1600s level and then turn over. But also keep in mind that we could be retesting something on the 17, this zone here, or nearer to it, and then have that back like a turnover. So I'm just going to keep these two options in mind, but the distance between these two are a good few pips there. So hopefully that should be enough to kind of give a week's perspective on gold. So we're going to take a look into EU. So for EU, I believe we were looking at a possible turnover. Where is we now? Hang on, let me just check the dates. So what we've got drawn there is pretty much like a turnover with the anticipation that price is gonna, ultimately push lower. 1 second. Okay, so we're looking at the 18th to the 12th. So 11, 12. So 11, roughly around here. So we saw this turnover. We can see prices pushing up. We could pretty much experience or see that prices starting to sell off. So what I'm going to be trying to do is pretty much one or two things really. So we'll either see price start to rally up once more, and then it could sell off here. So again, it could do something like that, or we could see price drop all the way back down. One of the other things, so pretty much we're going to be looking out for this kind of scenario. So I'm not entirely sure if we're going to see price rally up and then go down, or this is just going to completely melt off. So first off, I'm going to look out for this, so see if we can buy up to the upside. Technically I'm going to look for sells, but most likely it could run off and push up higher. So this may not happen. If that's the case, then we should be able to get some buys in and hedge ourselves up. But if price just starts to react now off of 1.02 and drop lower, we could actually start to dip into that the 1-to-1 1.0, which is, like I said, it's been quite a long time for that price that's been in this point. So we could expect something like that to happen over next few days, but that's what I'm kind of keeping my eye out for EU. So if you take a look at NZD USD, I'm looking at for this notion, so price to turn over now, and I guess looking for an upside potential. But another thing that's kind of I'm looking out for is that we could look at some sells. So price could easily drop off to the downside, and then we could have some sort of reaction, potentially at 0.6 or 0.605, and then it could do something like that. So really we could be looking out for some sell-off opportunities to the downside as well, but also just going to keep in mind that we could look out for some buys whilst we're still rejecting 0.61. So if I just make this a little bit clearer, so this is just suggesting that we could enter 0.6, find some rejection, and pretty much push higher, or we could sell off from rejecting 0.625 and drop to the downside. So something that I'm looking at with that. If we take a look at AU, So here I'm looking out for just pretty much a similar thing again. I'm just waiting for some kind of pullback, and then hopefully we can just rally to the upside. The other option is, if we do get this pattern to form, if we do get the rally to the upside, we could end up rejecting 0.7 or 0.695 to end up pushing it to the downside. So again, it could look like this. Both at this point, buys are valid, but we could also be looking at some sells to see if it can take out the lows of 0.67 even to 0.66. That's the kind of idea that we're looking for. So if we take a look at UJ, so I've got two scenarios I've got here. Okay, so if we just get rid of all of this, so we've got something where we could drop into the downside and then pull up, or we could have the idea that price is going to make one more high and then it could start to drop back into the 137 levels. So I've got this kind of outlook for the time being. So it really just depends if 139 can hold, essentially, and if we can reject this strongly, then it could push lower. Then the next kind of level is 135, 136. We could have some kind of rally to the upside. Again, really just depends if we see those rejection candles and seeing if we can follow it through. So looking at CJ, I was actually expecting 107 to hold actually and find some kind of huge drop off in the market. But obviously that didn't necessarily happen. So now my perspective for this has kind of changed. Just what I'm going to do now is just move this up a little bit. I'll just get rid of it, do it again. So what I'm going to be looking at for now is pretty much this idea that price could just make one more dip, continuation higher. That's the kind of idea that I'm going to be looking for. Whether this is a strong, deep pullback or if it's just a minor one, I'm not entirely sure for now, but looking at 109, see if we can reject that off at some point. We've got some sort of, we've got a channel forming here. So if we kind of just move that up, so something like that, so we could expect price to, maybe pierce the 109 above this channel and then have some sort of rejection. That's what we can look for, or we could also place this as another secondary level here as well, so creating like a nice pitchfork kind of channel pattern here. So we've got some intense rejection possibilities here, but this could be classed as like the oversold, the overbought, where it's too expensive now. We could look at for cheaper prices to the downside. So that's pretty much what I'm kind of looking at with CJ. If we take a look at EJ, yeah, so we can see that prices really respected this move to the upside. Really gutted that I really missed this actually. It's like a 400 pip move, but yeah, anyway. So yeah, what I'm looking at for now is this idea that we could potentially turn over to the downside, and potentially go lower. So it could look something like that, or it could do something like this and then drop off. So we've got one or two things here that we can look at. So some aggressive sells, in which we could then look at a possibility of buying, to which we could then possibly sell. Again, we're not sure if this is going to happen or this is happening. We need to wait for obviously that confirmation first before we start to take advantage of pretty much the the proper move, I guess, if that makes sense. So we'll see what we can come from this, what comes from this rather. But yeah, that's the kind of idea that I'm looking at so far. So we're expecting 144 to kind of reject and hold, and that's going to be our sell bias really. So we'll see what's going to happen with there. In regards to AJ, what we're looking at here is the idea that price could potentially push up, so it's pretty much doing that. I was expecting price to make one more low, but we can see now we're probably most likely heading up now. So again, I'm still going to keep an eye out for this potential turnover. Oops. So the idea is that price could do this, or the other option is price is going to step up like so. So what we could do is anticipate the possibility of a sell, but also keep the idea of a buy position alive as well. So again, it really depends what is going to come through over the next few weeks. I think pretty much this week, in regards to the analysis, I think we're quite fresh to the end of the week in terms of the move, so it really depends how next week's going to unfold, and I might need to do some videos in relation to that. But yeah, so if we take a look into USD Chef, so you can see price is pretty much turned over quite nicely. So what I've got here is, I might actually keep this in. So we're looking at some sort of push over to and then like a retest type of trade where we go higher, or we could be looking at, you know, pretty much one more drop lower and then it pushes up higher, which is always the case and always the possibility. So once we get above the 0.99 level, it really just depends what's going to happen at this point. I was wondering why I was doing that. It really depends if we can find a rejection at 0.99 and push lower, or if we're going to rally higher, we should be able to clear through it and go into 1.0 flat, and we should see if we can push higher with it. But yeah, still kind of unsure what's going to unfold above these levels, or if we go lower. But what I'm looking at now, what kind of makes sense to me, is like this continuation of pushing higher. So what I'm just going to do is just wait for that to happen and see, you know, what's the outcome of that. So with USD CAD, waiting, pretty much we can see prices already tapping into these areas right now. So what I'm looking at for now is to see if price is going to continue to push higher, or if it's going to completely drop off. So we had this annotation here, or I might keep this in. So the last week's annotation, or last video's annotations, were three scenarios. So the idea, if we break these lows of 128, 128.5, we could be looking at, you know, pretty much a retest and continuation to drop low. The other one is we'll start to find like a rally to the upside, so we can see prices kind of doing that right now, like so. So I might just leave these in. And then the other thing is, the question is, are we going to break 132? Not entirely sure, because I'm liking that strength that's kicking in to the downside, but we just need to wait. And I'm going to see if we can get up to that high point first before we can get into some sell-off positions. But for now, I'm thinking that price can take out that high. So that's what I'm suggesting so far, providing that 1285 holds. And 128 kind of holds as well. So just need to wait for that to happen, and yeah, that's pretty much what I've got for this week. Hopefully we can start to look at some moves maybe next week. I feel like all the moves, major moves, has happened. We just need to wait for next week, I guess, and just kind of prepare for next week's bigger moves. And yeah, hopefully you guys didn't miss out on any of the bigger moves that we've covered this week, because kind of the last week's, or the last video that we did, kind of suggested, or kind of, you know, you could have basically used those analysis from last week to kind of picture in what's going to happen this week, hopefully. But I don't think there was that many changing of biases, if that's a thing. But pretty much everything is still kind of on track, and yeah. So that will be all for this week. If you did get any value from this video, leave a like, make sure you're subscribed, and we shall see you all in our next week's video.